the International Association of Coaching. Home of the Coaching Masteries.
Hi, everyone. I would just like to welcome all of you to today's session of the IAC Learning Circle. So before we begin, let me just introduce today's topic. Today, we're going to be talking about embracing coaching in youth. So before we begin, I would just like to introduce our panelists, okay? First, here we have Rhonwyn. Maybe Rhonwyn can wave so everyone knows who you are. Yeah.
Hi.
So Rhonwyn is actually the founder of Project WHE, and she's also the coordinator for MYbeat Drum Circle, and she's also a drum circle facilitator with VMC Global. She's also an IAC Masteries Practitioner. And the second person on the panel is Roshaan. So Roshaan is with the Young Entrepreneur Program and also the Junior Achievement Malaysia Program Lead. So he specializes in financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and educational programs in youth. And finally, let me introduce myself. My name is Ching Hui. I am a clinical psychologist. I'm also an IAC Masteries Practitioner. So as we go on, I would like to invite you to, if you have any questions, just type it in the chat box and we will try to address it if we have time. Okay. As we begin, perhaps we can get Roshaan and Rhonwyn to tell us a bit more, about what you do in your line of work.
Yep. So let me go first. Thanks, Jinghui. Thanks, everyone, for giving us this opportunity to actually share our coaching experience. Us being youth ourselves and getting certified as professional coaches, right, and doing work with youth in Malaysia is it's a privilege for us actually. And what I do is I'm in the education industry where we do entrepreneurship and financial literacy programs with youth around Malaysia. So we have youth from marginalized communities, we have youth from urban poor areas, and we reach out to them to give them these basic skills, work readiness skills, entrepreneurial skills, and a lot of it has the coaching masteries or the coaching tools that I use, on a day-to-day basis with this youth or the students. This getting involved in coaching, I was actually been coached before by a coach from another country actually. And after going through that experience, I've got an interest in what coaching is like and how is it very beneficial in our day-to-day work. And so after that, met up with a few friends and got introduced to Captain Chan, who carried out this coaching program for us and got ourselves certified. So today I actually use some of the coaching tools with the youth I engage with. And I have to say that it is very, very beneficial to the youth and also to myself as I work with them. So that's it from me.
Okay, so hi, my name is Rhonwyn, and what I do essentially, I would say, is building potential and building communities, and that applies to everything I do in my work. So what Project We is a community development initiative, and we do community tourism in Sarawak, Malaysia. And we work with the indigenous and native people in Sarawak. And what we do is we use the resources that they have in their villages and we turn them into community tourism activities. So for example, they are a rice planting community. So we turn, let's say, planting rice into something that the tourists can do as well. Collecting vegetables from the jungle. These are all things that we have done, and we bring tourists from all over the world to these villages to tour and learn the lifestyle of the native people. And also it's a cross-cultural collaboration, and it's about learning about each other and breaking down boundaries. And the second thing that I do is I'm a facilitator in MYbeat drum circles. And what we do is community engagement as well, but using drums. And to give a visual of what a drum circle is, it's basically a circle of people sitting on chairs, and everyone has a drum or a piece of percussion in their hands. And together we create music. You don't have to be a drummer to be part of a drum circle. And that's the beauty of it, because everybody is welcome. And what we do with that is we go into community drum circles and we do corporate team building and also wellness. Whatever demographic is there, we can do a drum circle with that demographic. And I've been using coaching in both these work because coaching tools and coaching conversations are, I wish I had known about coaching when I started doing this, my drum circles and Project V, because a lot of the tools that we use in coaching are actually very, very relevant. And the masteries are also really, really relevant to what we do with community development and developing human potential, because we always want to bring the best out of people. And that's something that we do in drum circles, is bringing the best out of people. And that's something that we do in community tourism, is we want to bring the best out of the community. And just like Roshaan, I actually know Captain Shan through the drum circle community. And he said, you know what, you should join the coaching program. And so I did, and I have not looked back.
Okay, thank you so much, Ron and Roshaan, for sharing, a little bit about your background and, how you use coaching a little bit in your work now. So just to introduce all of you to us a little bit more. So Roshaan and Rhonwyn and myself, we met each other at the coaching course. So we've known each other for maybe a couple of months. And so we've also been coaches since, I think, slightly above a few months. Ron and Roshaan, can you please share, a little bit about how your coaching journey has been like so far?
Yeah, for me, I would say, coaching experience has been a very, very rewarding experience for me. Initially, when I started work with youth in this education industry, we do a lot of work surrounding people, right? It's a people business. And coaching is also related to people. We coach people. And so having this knowledge on coaching, knowing the process of getting the best out of the individual, has really, really helped me do well and connect well with some of the youth that I engage with. And also there's a sense of reward when you coach others, for yourself as well. The tools that you use, and there's also an element of self-coaching involved at times when you go through challenges, in work or in personal life. So over the last few months, I have to say that it has managed to connect all the dots, in work and in personal development as well for me. Being in the circle of coaching, and while I coach others, in some ways I get liberated as well in my personal development. So yeah.
For me, I would say very simply, my coaching journey has been rewarding and enriching for me personally, for personal development. And the way I see it is, in a lot of the work that we do, whoever we are, we focus a lot on what we give out to other people and how can we help other people. But there's a lot of things that we don't look at, which is, well, we have to help ourselves too. And if we can't give ourselves the love, and if we can't, help ourselves, then how are we going to help other people? And so that's why I really think that my coaching journey has really benefited me a lot for personal development, because it has transformed the way that I talk to people. And it's given me a new sense of awareness towards people. And it's something that previously I didn't have as much as awareness to. Like we talk about it, but then suddenly when you are put into the field and you're like coaching someone one-on-one, suddenly just this whole new, paradigm comes alive. And that has been probably my biggest learning so far in coaching, is just that there's more out there to learn as coaches. And we're constantly learning. That's why we're here at a learning circle. There's always something to learn, and there's always things that we can do to help the world around us. But we have to first help ourselves before we do that.
Okay, I can definitely, relate to what Roshaan and Ron is saying about how learning coaching has really enlightened the coach, myself, and yourself in the process. And I definitely can relate to that. Speaking about your coaching journey, I was wondering if you've had an experience where you had to coach someone, perhaps more senior, or maybe someone more experienced than yourself. And what was that like?
Yeah. That is definitely something that you will come across, being a youth yourself, and being, in starting out in your career in whichever industry you are in, and being a coach with, limited experience at the start. You will tend to come across people who are far more experienced than you in whichever industry or whichever job or career they are in. And I, over the course of the last few months, with the little bit of experience that I had, I have got the opportunity to coach a few people who were much more senior than me in terms of age, and of course in terms of where they are in their career. And one thing I realized initially was not as easy as I thought it would be, because some of them come with some kind of expectations to the session. They of course look at you as a young individual, and they of course feel that they're more experienced than you. But what I've learned, to get the best out of the session, regardless of who is on the other side, is, to always be prepared, be very prepared, and in the sense that try to be yourself, regardless of who you're talking to. When you are at this session, you are a coach, right? You are the coach, and you have to bring out, your intention is to bring out the best out of the coachee, right? So to be prepared is one, I would say. And of course, we are all equipped with the right masteries, and we are equipped with the right tools. We can be in any coaching situation, right? We know what we can do. So being confident with the tools we have is also another one I would say is very, very important. The right coaching skills to use, right? And of course, at times it can be a little bit intimidating, And one thing I realize is, one thing we always talk about when we're in the coaching circle, as all of us are coaches, is to have the emotional excellence, while you're coaching. And so that comes into play quite a bit, because once you are able to talk the language of the coachee, the whole experience becomes different, both for myself and also for the coachee. And of course, one thing that we all have is the masteries. And as long as you can focus on the masteries, you will have a very, very productive, the coachee will have a very, very productive session. And I would say one thing that comes to mind right now is probably the first mastery, which is building that trust with the client, and once that is built, regardless who you're talking to, you will always have a very, very effective and productive conversation for the client.
Yeah, going off with what Roshaan said, be prepared and also be confident in your abilities and trust in the process that is coaching. You're there to have a conversation. You're not there to show who's better than who. And the both of you have a common goal, which is to get somewhere better. And as a youth, don't be afraid to address some things that you may be afraid to address older folks. And I find, especially for us as Asians, right, we tend to be like, oh no, you can't say that, it's disrespectful to elderly or people of older generation. And if you want to you have an effective coaching conversation, there are things that you have to address. You know, you have to rip the Band-Aid off to get to where you need to go. And so as a coach, you have to trust in yourself and trust in the process, and don't put on a new face. You know, be genuine. And when you put on a coaching hat, you're not becoming someone else. You know, you just have to be your genuine self. And I think that's one of the most important things as well. And so that would be mastery 5, I think, which is expressing. So when you talk to someone, you know, that's older than you and about effective communication, just make sure that you can be respectful, but you should also address things that are not being said in the conversation if you want to have an effective conversation.
Thanks, Rhonwyn and Roshaan. What I hear you, the both of you saying is that in order for us to be able to coach those who are older, because we will come across people who are maybe more experienced or more senior than us, is to really just be ourselves, but at the same time being confident in the tools that we already have, and in the skills that we have as a young person. So, earlier Roshaan mentioned that, when you were coaching someone more senior than yourself, they had expectations of perhaps, I don't know, was it about you, the coach, or was it about the coaching session? Can you share more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think people usually have a several expectations about what coaching is, and I guess being a global tool used everywhere in all over the world, people have different expectations for what coaching is and what coaching can be. But I guess what we have been taught, from the IAC, is the coach does not need to be a subject matter expert. I think we always come across that, and sometimes when I go for some of these coaching sessions with the client, especially if they are a little bit more senior than you, they think that you have to be a subject matter expert. When you're doing the session, or if they're planning to talk about something related to work, and because they have more life experiences than you, if they are slightly older and senior to you, so that sometimes becomes I think a expectation in terms of the client. And so I think some people also take coaching for mentoring. They get confused with both, and I believe it's sometimes a very people use it very loosely, these two terms. But actually, I guess if all of us here, we would know the difference very quickly, what coaching and mentoring would be. And so I guess being very clear about what a coach's role is in the session, regardless of who you're talking to, is very important. And I've come across that a lot, where so these two things, they get confused with what coaching and mentoring is, and there lies the confusion, right? And of course, being a subject matter expert, knowing that we are a youth, and we are probably sometimes we are new to this coaching world as well. So sometimes they feel that you would need to have a little bit more experience, or a little bit more life experience, in order to be a good coach.
Adding on to that as well, a funny story, when we were doing our practicals to get our coaching certificate, we had to find some coaches, and one of them actually did a background check of me, not a serious background check, but actually went, Googled my name, found me on Facebook and everything, and said, who is this person? And who is she, and how is she going to coach me? What does she know about coaching, a CFO like me? And when we got to the first session, I think it's very important that you put everything out on the table at the first time. And you have to be clear and you have to be direct. You know, you can say things like, oh, as coaches, we make your life better, but that could be anything. What do you mean by make your life better? And so it's important to say what the journey is about, and lay out the expectations right there and then on the table before you even start coaching. And that's something that, you know, we were taught when we were getting our certificate, and it's something very important to note when you do coaching. And in regards to other expectations as well, sometimes they think as youth, we don't have enough life experience to coach them, especially if we want to call ourselves life coaches. What have we gone through at 27 years old or, you know, 30 years old to say that we are qualified to tell them what to do with their life at 50 years old? But funny thing is, when you actually go into that conversation, sometimes they try to give advice and say, oh, you know, this is how you should do this and this is how you should do that. And you can always flip it around to them and say, are you speaking based on life experience? And sometimes that can click with them in the coaching conversation where they say, oh yes, actually, I should be doing that in my life instead of just telling the younger generation to do that. Or they could recall back on what they have done from the advice that they're giving us. And we can ask them, you know, how would you tailor that experience to where you are right now in life? Or what would you change about that? And how would you make that better now? So there's always a way to, we can say, Uno reverse card them with whatever they throw at us as young coaches. And it's about still, again, about being genuine and being yourself, and also being respectful to your coachee. It doesn't matter what age they are.
Right. So what I hear you both saying is that, you know, when you are met with a mismatch of expectation, it seems like the first thing that the both of you do is to basically set the expectation right and to explain what coaching is, you know, to explain that coaching is not mentoring, because it does seem like there was some expectation that you would have been a subject matter expert in order for you to help, you know, those who came to you. I'm wondering, you know, is there anything else that you guys did, you know, when you were coaching someone who did not maybe have a clear idea of what coaching was, or perhaps they were a little bit confused or confuse it with maybe mentoring or even consulting, or, you know, the other roles that we see, which is not coaching?
Yeah. So I think, you know, we have a great number of tools that we can use, you know, which we have come across, you know, day-to-day work, tools used for different occasions or different purposes, I would say, right? But when we talk about coaching, right, I think what I've realized over the last few months when we coach somebody a little bit more senior, or there's a mismatch in expectations of what coaching is. One thing that stood out to me always was the contracting part right at the beginning of the coaching relationship. And I think, you know, there are people who sometimes may overlook this part, where they straight dive into the coaching session without actually sort of going through what is the roles and responsibilities or the expectation from both the coach and, of course, the coachee or the client, right? So I would say, you know, in order to bridge that mismatch or the confusion, I would say focusing on that contracting part right at the beginning of the session and ensuring everything is clearly understood by both parties, you know, so that if they have any confusion, if they have any doubts, any questions, or they feel like they need to be asking you something that they're looking for, can be dealt with at the contracting stage, you know, when you're getting to know the person and them getting to know what a coaching session or coaching sessions may look like, you know, going forward. And of course, I think to always also for the coach, right, to always be aware of the session and how it is progressing for the client, right? So sometimes there have been times where I'm coaching a person senior than me, and it turns into like more like him or the other person giving me advice, because I'm a much more junior to them. So I think being aware of your coaching session and where it is going and how it is evolving for the client is something very, very important and very, very essential as a coach to be always present and listen to the slight nuances in the conversation. And I think to also focus on the goals of the client, right? What is the main objective? Why are we here for? And being very clear about that at all times will definitely help to bridge this gap.
Wow, Roshaan, you just took all the words out of my mouth. For people who are met with different expectations, a lot of them think that, I think this is something that we all face. People think that coaching means that you are a basketball coach or a sports coach. And the fact that you can actually sit someone down and have a conversation is something very new, or it's something very, what's the word? Like spiritual, when you see like, I'm a life coach, I'm going to bring you on this journey, and people just don't really get into that kind of spiritual things, but it's actually very productive and it is for everyone. And when it comes to the mismatch, a lot of times what you can do is just say, let me show you. And this was something that Captain Shan had taught us when we were in our cohort, which was, okay, if you don't know what coaching is, let me show you. And he just started having a conversation with someone and they didn't even know that they were being coached. And that, to me, I think is very, very powerful, because then after that, they realized that, okay, actually, there is a lot that we can benefit from this. And they didn't have to feel anything different. They didn't have to feel like they were uncomfortable, because they were just having a conversation. And that's what coaching with IAC is all about. It's just having a conversation with your genuine selves to get to a goal that you want to achieve. And that simple sentence just brings so much clarity to people. And I've really benefited from that piece of advice.
Thank you, Roshaan and Rhonwyn. I really liked it when you said, Rhonwyn, that being your genuine self and just having a conversation. And, I was reminded of how just having a conversation as yourself is so powerful. It's not trickery, it's not something where you tell someone what to do. That in itself, becomes a powerful tool. Speaking of challenges that you guys mentioned earlier, challenges with mismatch of expectation, and you mentioned how you've dealt with challenges, especially with people who do not understand what coaching is. Have you encountered any other types of challenges as a young coach, perhaps young in terms of a fresh coach, not necessarily just age?
Yeah, so I would say, all of us being, the three of us being sort of, you would say new coaches, right? And we're new to the coaching world. So I think people have this, like I mentioned earlier, people have this expectation that a coach comes with bags of experience, in a particular field, right? And I think that is something that of course, as I have been coaching a few individuals who are senior than me, they have this, and sort of sometimes it sort of gets to you as a coach, because you maybe focus on that a little bit more, or you overthink about a particular situation. And one thing that I always sort of think about, because we're equipped with all these tools and these skills, the element of actually self-coaching comes into play quite a bit, right? So when you're stuck, because that's one thing when we're going through the certification process, some of the tools that we learned and the process of thinking, right? Actually, I've been able to actually use that for myself at times when you're stuck in a situation, as you meet different individuals. People can be very, very colorful, right? As we meet individuals and we meet people from different backgrounds, and as being sort of junior coaches, if you would call it that way, right? And I would say that element of self-coaching always comes into play, where we ask ourselves what the main purpose of us doing coaching is, and to be very clear that it's always about the client and the coachee, and we are just, as Captain Chan always puts it, we're always the custodian of the process, right? And to get them from through the process of transformation. So I think just focusing on that, being very aware of that at all times, will be actually very, very helpful.
As a new coach, some personal challenges, the first few times has definitely been being in my head, because when you're a new coach, you're always worried about your coachee, and are they thinking that I'm doing something wrong? Do they think that I'm not saying or asking the right question? And when you're too much in your head, then you are missing out on mastery number 3, which is engaged listening, which is the core of coaching, which is listening to your coachees. And so putting all that fear away is very important, and just being in the moment, processing in the present, being there with your coachee, and just having, the same expectations is very important. And for me as well, I'm a very relational person, which means I like to talk. And so putting that aside and tuning in to more of the listening was also a challenge in the beginning. And it's something I'm still working on, I will be honest. And it gets better. You learn to know when is your time to speak. When is your time to speak more and when it's your time to speak less. And also it's very important, with that being said, to know yourself and help yourself first, to know what your triggers are, to know what kind of person you are, and then you can address and see how you can effectively work with your coachee based on the kind of person that you are, and then figuring out the kind of person that your coachee is. So that's why, again, going back to one of my first points, it's important to help yourself before you help others. It's important to know yourself and the challenges that you think you may go through, and figuring out, self-coaching yourself, how you can get through those, and then only putting your best self out to your coachees.
I can definitely relate, and it reminds me of the early days when we started coaching. I myself was very focused on achieving the goal, so it became so goal-centric. I forgot that coaching is about the client and not the goal. And I like how, Roshaan is saying that he even used coaching to help himself to overcome those challenges, the challenges that he faced. And as for Rhonwyn, you said that it's important that we have self-awareness. So in order for us to progress, we need to be aware of our own tendencies. So, it sounds like the both of you are using different types of skills and tools that you have to improve yourself, in your skill as a coach. Is there anything else that you guys are doing, to kind of improve your skill as a coach?
So I would say one thing that I think has benefited me quite a bit is to always, as a coach and as a person who is new to the coaching world, coaching industry, these are like skills that you get, and like everything, like any other skill, the more you do it, the more you practice it, the more you engage with people who are from the similar industry, you get better at it, and one thing I would say is to actually practice the skills a lot with your peers. So I think, when we were in our cohort, when we're getting certified as professional coaches, we always had this this sort of activity where we call it the coaching lab, right? Where we all act as a coach, and a coachee, and we have a person observing us. And one thing that I really got from those sessions were, those were very, very, I think, powerful sessions, because we immediately become very self-aware of where our strengths are, what we're doing well, what we're not doing so well, what we need to improve on. And you can immediately see a change in yourself, right? So when you're sitting as a coach, you observe, you're doing the session with the client, and then a few minutes later, maybe 15, 20 minutes later, you're on the client side, right? So you're seeing it from a different perspective. And then the last part, you will be, an observer, right? Just observing these two individuals, the coach and the client, going through the whole conversation. So I felt that was one that really was very, very beneficial, because it made me very self-aware of myself, my body language, the way I was sitting down, the way I was asking questions, how I was attentively listening to the client, and if the good questions I asked or the not so great questions I asked. So that really helped a lot. And after getting certified as a coach, one thing that, because we tend to have this skill, and then we tend to move on with our life, get on with our careers, apply these skills in our day-to-day careers, right? So one thing I would say is one thing, if you're not applying it directly in your day-to-day work, I would say a coaching lab practice session would really be very, very beneficial. If you come together as peers, maybe once or twice a month, and just practice your skills, and you always learn from each other. So I think that is something that actually is very, very beneficial for me, and I kept reminding myself of the things that I've not been doing so well, and being aware of that.
For me, as a young coach and a relatively new coach, like Roshaan said as well, peer reviews are a good place to start. Coachee reviews are a good place to start too, because they are your direct client. And also self-review. After each coaching session, sit down for a couple minutes and reflect about your session. What do you think you did well? And what do you think needs improvement? And it's very important for us, I believe, to not say what were my mistakes, because when you label it as a mistake, it's a negative. And we always want to be solution focused when we are coaching. And that again applies to ourselves. We want to be solution focused. So instead of saying, what mistakes did I made when I was coaching, you can say, what do I need to work on? And if you call it a mistake, then you don't learn something. It's not a mistake if you learn something from it, then it's a learning moment. So always find something new to learn. And especially with us as well, as we go on and as we get more experience, it's always good to refine our skills and learn new things, keep up with, latest trends, for example, or, latest developments in coaching. And we can't say that, oh, now we have 20, 30 years of experience. We know what we're doing. We don't need to learn anything else. And coaching as well should be lifelong learning. Everything we do should be lifelong learning. And that keeps the brain active. So there's always something new to learn. Don't call it a mistake. Don't rush to find a solution with yourself is another thing. Don't say that, okay, now I know this, I don't have to do it anymore, or I need to know this by this date and time. So it's always good to take time for yourself to figure out how you want to best present yourself as a coach. Don't rush to try and be the best that you can be, because personal development takes time. You cannot accelerate personal development. It could take years, and you could never really fully develop yourself even, because we're lifelong learners. And also, as a young coach, is to invite possibilities and don't be afraid to don't be afraid of challenges. What was the word that we were using in our cohort? The grown zone. Don't be afraid to leave the grown zone. Always step out of your boundaries and take up challenges and then celebrate your successes, no matter how small they are, because every success that you have is a success worth celebrating, and it's a step forward. A small step forward is better than no steps forward. And that's something that I believe that we as young coaches should be aware of, to not beat ourselves up as young coaches. There is a lot to learn in the world. There is a big world out there, and there's a lot to explore. There's a lot of people we can learn from. We learn from each other. We learn from those that are younger than us. We learn from those that are older than us. And all the experiences that we have essentially make us our unique self-coaches.
Thanks, Rhonwyn. I hear, the both of you throughout the conversation incorporating a lot of what we learn in the IAC Masteries into your own journey, not just what we do as a coach, but who we are, our way of being, as Captain Shan always says, not just what we do. And we have a question from the audience by Putri. Putri asks, can both of you share with us one actual successful coaching story?
Okay. So yeah, I think there's a few, if I may recall. So this one person I was actually coaching during the certification program, and we were getting ourselves certified, and we were learning the skills, we were learning the masteries, the right tools to use. So I think it was, the second or third session we were conducting, and of course we learn as we go along. So this person actually wanted to. She was a working adult. She had a full-time job, a 9-to-5 job, and she had an aspiration to be a entrepreneur, to start her own business, to be on her own feet. And that experience for her, because she had prior experience of starting a business and it went really sour, and that sort of had a very traumatic experience for her. And so over the course of I think it was 4 or 5 sessions, she went from a place of completely being very terrified of owning your own business, walking the path of entrepreneurship, where there's a saying where entrepreneurship is like jumping off a cliff, and on the way down trying to make the aeroplane, right? Trying to make the aeroplane. So it was that sort of experience for her. But she knew that one of her life goals was she wanted to be an entrepreneur, and she was very good at the property business, right? And so over the course of 5 sessions, we went from a place of, even for me myself as a coach, right, from a place of doing well as a coach, and for the coachee, it was a place where she went into a place where she had not explored herself before. Like what Rhonwyn said earlier, to go into the deep places that people may usually step back and say, it's not for me, it's not my place, right? But doing the right thing is to actually go forward, and sometimes as coaches we need to let the client experience those deep feelings and those deep feelings that they have inside of them. So over the course of the 5 coaching sessions that we had, I must say that this person actually stepped out of her shell, and actually sort of started her business in a very small way, while working a full-time job, and actually going to register her business, officially register her business, and actually carry out this entrepreneur journey of hers. I would say was something rewarding, and looking back, it was sort of a very rewarding experience for me as well, because then you start to realize how actually important the coaching skills and the tools you learned, and how powerful they can be actually to actually make a difference in someone's life. So there was one that I actually very vividly remember, and I always use that as a as a learning story for me every time I look for answers.
For me, collectively, I think the most powerful moments in the coaching sessions that I've done is having them find that aha moment. And a lot of the aha moments come from them realizing that they have achieved more than they thought they have. And so a couple of examples was I had one lady and she also wanted to start her own social enterprise. And she wanted to do something that was, waste management related and zero waste. And she had all these ideas and she said she wanted to do it by the time she was 50 years old. And I asked her, what percentage do you think you are when for this? And she said, oh, I think I'm at 5%. Okay, great. So as we progressed throughout the weeks, she went from 5% to about 60%. And she left the coaching sessions with a complete framework of what she wanted to do with her social enterprise. And it was something that even she didn't think that she would be able to do in just a short amount of time. She thought that, there's the funding for social enterprise that has to be involved. And then there's, finding co-founders and then coming up with a presentation and just all of these things that don't exactly matter yet. But just having the framework and having her vision ready was just, coming into coaching sessions and seeing her light up when she talks about her vision, when she talks about what she wants to do and how she's going to do it was really inspiring to me. And when you can see the passion in someone's eyes, it really, really shines. And on her first coaching session, she was really quiet, and she didn't really talk much. And just bringing that out of her, by the next session, I said, what was your progress? And she said, oh my God, I learned so many things and I found this and I found this and I found this. And that just made my heart really, really happy. And another one was he was feeling quite down with his life and he wasn't really sure what direction he was going. He put himself at a 2 in terms of happiness out of 10. And throughout the weeks, we asked, where do you think you are now? And he says, well, I still think I'm at a 2. And, we brought out his framework again and said, well, this is what you said your 10 looks like. Is it still what your 10 looks like? Yes, it is. Okay, well, tell me about all the different things that you've done to make it a 10. And he listed all of the things that he had done during coaching and, the follow-up work that he would do after our sessions. And I said, don't you think you're a little bit higher than that? And he said, actually, yes, I think I'm at an 8. And so from that one session and just that reassurance and the clarifying, and just helping them realize their potential and that they actually are at a better place than they are, from jumping from a 2 in the beginning of the session to jumping to an 8 was just one of those really beautiful aha moments and just really heartwarming to see that, people realize that they are not in such a bad place and that there's always something to look forward to. And using the tools that we have, like I used the Golden Circle, the Simon Sinek Golden Circle tool. And I said, okay, tell me why you're doing this. I know we're not supposed to say why in coaching that much, but just with this, I said, okay, tell me the very core of it. Why is this the core? And, having her list that down and then, giving her that paper with her own words, just saying, this is what you wrote, and just seeing the light. And they said, wow, actually, this really makes sense. And, the appreciation that we get from our coaches, I think, so that's something like that's really hard to accept as well, is that people say, actually, you're doing a good job. And we go, oh, no, are we really doing a good job? And just, it not only makes them feel good, but it makes us feel good. And it's just so rewarding as a coach.
What I gather from the sharing, that both of you shared about your success story is that, not only is the coachee inspired and working or reaching their goals, but as coaches ourselves, our lives are impacted when we see the transformation, and it impacts us, it affects us also in a way that inspires us to continue going as coaches. Okay, I think we are close to the end, so we'll cover one last question. I think the thing that we've covered so far is about coaching or embracing coaching among youth from a coach's perspective, right? Let's talk a little bit about a coachee's perspective, meaning how can we make coaching relevant to youth? Yeah.
Yep. So when we talk about us ourselves being a coach, right, as a youth, and on the other side, we can use these skills, these tools that we have learned to actually empower the younger generation, people younger than us who are, coming out in the world, discovering themselves, waiting to explore everything that life has to offer. And one thing that comes in play, the coaching skills that we learned from what I've seen in my day-to-day work, because as I work with a lot of young youth, a lot of high school students, when we do our programs with them, because we are so equipped with the skills, sometimes we tend to have a coaching conversation with some of these young people, right? And I would say, in order for us to bring out the best in young people, it's actually a field that maybe has not been explored by many people around the world. And I think as having this sort of skills, being certified coaches ourselves, I think that will be one of my on my to-do list, to get the coaching skills in a way to empower the younger generation, right? And one thing I would say is to sort of have the stakeholders, like, for example, if you're working with the Ministry of Education, or you're working with schools, you're working with education organization, to have the stakeholders actually know the benefit of coaching and what it brings to a young individual, I think is something which is very important. And of course, many young people, they're always finding their voice. As youth, we're always finding our way around, and we're always finding that voice, that purpose for us to do what we do. And through a coaching conversation, or through a coaching relationship, right, asking the right questions to bring out this voice in the younger generation is something that is very important, and I think can be explored further a lot, especially in Malaysia, as me, Ron, and even Chinghui yourself, when we work with youth, I think using that skill to empower these young individuals, right, as they come into the workforce, they come into the world, they come into their tertiary education. It's something that it's very, very rewarding, which I've seen myself, and definitely looking forward to to sort of explore this further.
Thanks, Roshaan. Perhaps for Rhonwyn, one other thing that you can add, is, do you have any advice, for an aspiring young coach, coming from the younger generation?
Okay, so along with Roshan's question and advice. Okay, so for youth who want to pursue coaching, how do we make it relevant? Well, coaching is something that we can use every day in our lives. It's not something that only has to be done when we are having a coaching conversation. And for us, especially as millennials, we're the ones who are leaving university and we're finishing our master's programs or PhD, whatever it may be, and we're entering the workforce. The masteries can be applied to our work, even if we're not, leaders in our workplace, even if we're just salarymen, they can still be applied. Things like engaged listening. It's always important to listen and to pick up where we can improve ourselves, and, to be open-minded, to be respectful of the people around us, and accepting of the people around us, no judgments of the people around us. These are the soft skills that, you know, they don't teach you in university, but are skills that we should have when we are entering the workforce, because that just makes us essentially better people. And also it affects your conversation with friends. You know, as people, we tend to want to give advice to our friends, even when they don't want the advice. So when, you know, they're pouring their heart out to you, when they're confiding in you, it's also important that we can take coaching steps and coaching tools to be there for our friends. You know, they don't necessarily want advice. Maybe sometimes asking them a simple question could be their way forward, and not saying, you know what, I think you should do this, you should do that, because we will never truly understand what other people are going through. And that's something that, you know, we pick up when we are doing our coaching training. And also, again, inviting the possibilities into your life. Coaching is about stepping out of your comfort zone, and it's about growing as a person, and it's about challenging yourself and refining the skills that you have, and to just keep learning every day, and to have personal growth, to be able to self-coach, continuously ask yourselves, how can I be the best version of myself? That is a coaching question. So a lot of non-coaches have actually been coaching themselves and other people at some point in their lives, which is something that Captain Sean also says. And when you come into a coaching training, and when you're trained as a coach, you realize that you have been doing all of these coaching things before, but now you are just more equipped, and you know how to tailor it to make it work for you, and to bring out the best in others, and to bring out the best in yourself. And so some advice as well for young coaches or to-be coaches, it would be to be curious. And that's something as well when we are having coaching conversations. Be curious to know about what they're doing, and always be curious to learn. And, you know, sometimes we say like, oh, this experience is irrelevant to me, I'm never going to use this. But every experience that we get will be useful. You know, if you don't like it, at least you can say that you know you don't like it, but there can be benefit with it. When I was in school, I said I would never do accounting, and I would never sew. And here now I have to do accounts, and I have to sew my own clothes and stuff. So we never know. And same thing with coaching, right? So something to try, something to be a part of. IAC is here for you. IAC is a great place to be. And I'm sure Ching-Hui and Roshaan, we can attest to that we ourselves have benefited a lot from being a part of this international family.
Yep.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you, Roshaan and Rhonwyn. What I gather from the question about how can we promote a coaching culture, you know, among youth, is that Roshaan was sharing how we could always approach it from a top-down perspective, meaning we increase coaching literacy among people who are the stakeholders, who can decide and who can perhaps incorporate coaching in the programs in the different organizations. And Rhonwyn was saying how we can integrate it into our daily lives, basically using it in our just casual conversations, you know, with people, with colleagues, with friends, and this ways we can how we can promote coaching among youth. Okay, thank you everyone, you know, for sharing, and I really appreciate both of you, your input about coaching, your coaching journey, and your experience. I'm wondering if there is a question from the audience. If there is, we can take one question and then we will close. Yes, Irene.
Yes, okay. First of all, you three guys really inspire me. I mean, that was a great refresher for me. So as a young coach, but senior in age, I would like to ask all three of you the same question. So supposing you are my coachee and I'm your coach, and what would you like to, what do you want from me? Specifically, what do you want to hear me saying? What do you want to see me doing? Now, the reason I ask this question is, sometimes there's the gap. So you are sharing your challenges about coaching people who are, more, elder than you. So now, the years of, you are much younger than me. And I like to know, I like to tap on that. What do you want to hear me say specifically? And what do you want to see me doing? I know the masteries is all important, but I really, really want to know maybe the topmost, innermost thing that you really want someone who is senior, because I don't know, sometimes there is this perspective about people who are very senior being a coach. It's not always advantageous, like what you're saying. Some of you were sharing about you being so young and people may not have the confidence in you, but the other way around could be also true. All right.
I think that's a great question. But the first thing that comes to mind, I think which we are always reminded of, is it's always the client's agenda, the coach's agenda. And part of it, I think there's always us being millennials, us being young people. There's always a lot of articles, there's a lot of studies about how millennials behave, the kind of experiences that we have had compared to the older generation. I know, and I know many youth these days, I know we've been through a pandemic, we've been through like a long period of time being enclosed in our own houses, and as young people, we always like to interact, we always like to mix around with our friends, have the interaction with them, going to schools, right, which was taken away by this pandemic, right? Not by our own doing, of course, but looking at it from the other point of view, you as the coach, I think what millennials would actually look for, and the main important thing is always the coach's agenda. It's always the client's agenda. But I think being hearing them out is something that comes to mind as I deal with a lot of young people. We tend to, as a little bit older, we tend to have these biases towards them, or not hearing them out enough, in what they're actually saying. Is something that I think we can do more. And definitely as coaches, if you're equipped with the right tools, that is something that you would do, and is something that should come normally to you in any coaching conversation. So I think that's for me, I guess.
Okay.
Ron?
Okay, for me, it would be two things. Number one is to be curious. If there's something about the young generation that you perhaps don't quite understand, be curious to find out. Maybe it's an innuendo, or if it's a abbreviation or something like LOL that you don't quite understand, it's okay to be curious and to ask. And I'm sure we would be more than happy to explain that. And the second thing would be, don't say the right things to make us feel happy. Sometimes what we do need is a good slap. And sometimes we do need to see the reality of things as well. Sometimes there may be life experiences that we don't quite have yet, that perhaps you have. And using coaching questions and coaching techniques, it could be good to, give us a light slap with a coaching question and say, how do we get us on the right path, and maybe bring down our egos, or, set us on good expectations. So these are the two things that I would say would be beneficial when you are taking on a young coachee. And also, again, to be genuine.
Okay.
I think to add on to what Roshaan and Ron said about being curious, I think for me personally, if I were to have an older coach, am I being seen as I am? Am I visible to that person as I am? Not being expected to be a certain way, but am I seen exactly just as I am? So I think, like Ron said, if we are curious, then we get to see who the millennial is or who the youth is. Yeah. So I think that's really important, having visibility.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yep.
Irene, for that
All right.
wonderful question.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. So we've reached the end of this session. I want to thank all of you for tuning in to today's Learning Circle. We hope that you got something from our little conversation. Thank you, and we'll see you in
the International Association of Coaching. Home of the Coaching Masteries.